Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ron, and today we're going to be talking about kind of a mechanic that I toss around sometimes, at least whenever I'm doing build guides or whenever I've been on stream and people have been asking me what makes a good build for some of, whatever weapon they want on Deep Rock or whatever kind of build they want. And this applies to other games too. This isn't just for Deep Rock, but since I've been playing a whole bunch of Deep Rock recently and making a bunch of videos about it, I figured this would be a good place to do it. And that is talking about breakpoints. So first up, I get the question of what is a breakpoint pretty often. And a breakpoint in kind of a general sense is just where you, at least in something like Deep Rock, is where you exceed the amount of, in this case, damage that you need to surpass an enemy's health. That's not always what a breakpoint means in every game. Good example of this is like I had been playing a bunch of Diablo 2 once it got the remaster. And then in like Diablo 2, you got things like attack speed breakpoints. You've got movement speed, I think movement speed breakpoints, like spellcast speed breakpoints. You've got, damage breakpoints that you want to be hitting, or mana cost breakpoints you want to be hitting. None of that applies to Deep Rock, of course, except for the damage breakpoint. Like I said, this is where you're exceeding the minimum amount of damage that you need to. You don't always need to go to the most amount of damage that you can actually get with a weapon in order to kill things. You just need to have, you usually just want to hit to where you're lethal enough. Going way overkill with your build isn't really necessary unless you're just trying to kill something very big in the quickest amount of time possible, because there's no way you're going to kill it with just one shot, so you might as well just max out full damage on anything that you got. So, the breakpoints that we're going to be talking about in this, there's really two that I go off of in Deep Rock Galactic. And these ones actually change based on difficulty and based on how many people you have. Not these two, but other breakpoints do. So, first up is going to be the Swarmers, which are small enemies that are pretty common in Deep Rock. These attack you all the time. And then the second is going to be Grunts. The Swarmer, it's base health, at least whenever you see base health means that it's set to hazard 2 in Deep Rock. So the Swarmer's base health in hazard 2 is 12 points. So you have to hit 12 points of damage or higher to one-shot them. Swarmers do not have a weak point. They'll take damage regardless of where you hit them. So if you hit them in the leg, in the body, or in the head, it doesn't matter. They'll take the same amount of damage. You don't get any bonuses towards that particular point of damage or anything like that. So you want to be hitting 12 points of damage. Now this scales up based on the difficulty that you're playing on, and once you hit hazard 4 and hazard 5, they have the same amount of health that they would. The only real difference between hazard 4 and hazard 5 is that you take more elemental damage, or you take more environmental damage, I should say. You take more damage from enemies, you take more damage from friendly fire, and enemies spawn much more often. I think enemies might move a little bit faster depending on what type they are too. I'm not entirely certain about that one though, so don't quote me there. But this scales the Swarmer's health up from 12 points up to 14.4 points. Now, as far as I know, nothing hits 14.4 damage exactly, but there are quite a few weapons that hit 15 damage exactly, like the GK2, which we have pulled up right here. This is on Karl.gg. This is a free building calculator. You can actually build however you would like, but you can see where your damages are, so you can see the base damage, and we're hitting 15 damage. So the GK2 assault rifle will one-shot body shot Swarmers, which that's pretty nice to have. Now, you can also see that there's different weak spot damage bonuses here too. So you have 1x, which actually isn't completely 1x. You get a little bit more damage than that when you're hitting a weak spot. But but as it says here, important, 1x damage is applied to Praetorians and Oppressors. Against everything else, you will be doing usually more damage, which is where it comes up at 2x damage is applied to all Grunts and most enemies. That's going to be the most common enemies that you're going to be going for, so this is shooting things like Grunts in the head. So if you're shooting a Grunt in the head, you are then doing 33 damage. So the GK2, like some weapons, does have a passive weak spot bonus damage. So that's why it's actually doing this 16.5 damage and this 33 damage, because you have that extra 10% damage that you're doing. Otherwise, this would just be 30 damage on the 2x. So let's talk about the Grunts now. The Grunt has a base health of 90. Now that's on hazard 2. That health goes up. If you're on hazard 4 and 5, they have 108 health. This is the other common breakpoint that I talk about when you're trying to hit that. So usually you're trying to hit 55 damage or so. You could do it with 54 damage, which there is actually some builds that can hit that exactly, to where you can just have enough damage to one-shot body shot grunts. But most weapons, not really. As well as some weapons have damage over time, which we can talk about in a little bit too. So with something like the GK2, even if we go full damage, so we're getting 2 more direct damage, we're getting 1 more direct damage here, we're going for extra damage on the hollow points. I don't think we get any extra damage from any of this. So we're going with this. This is full damage on the GK2, and we go up to 18 damage. We're doing 46 damage, or 46.8. We'll just round it up to 47 damage per shot if we hit a grunt in the head. Now, if we just didn't go full damage like this, we're hitting 33. So with the full damage build, we are now able to 3-shot headshot a grunt, even on the hardest difficulty. We wouldn't be able to do that without the damage mods. However, you don't need all the damage mods to hit that number, because as soon as you add 1 damage, okay, now you're going up to 37, which means you could also 3-shot headshot a grunt. So kind of keep that in mind once you're building for the gun. Usually you're just concerned with, at least me, I'm usually just concerned with something like 15 damage or the 55 damage or 110 damage or more. Everything else, I'm usually okay with dealing with the, not quite full points that we're dealing. So if you wanted to do something more efficient to where you just wanted the 3-shot headshot a grunt, but you wanted more of a well-rounded build for the GK2 and maybe you don't have any overclocks, you could go with something like extra ammo. We're just going to go with an extra clip. We'll go with the extra headshot damage, and that's all we need. Another good weapon like this is the M1000. This one hits our nice breakpoint, and this is a really good one for killing grunts, where we have a damage of 55. So this means we have 110 headshot damage. So we can one-shot headshot a grunt. We can also use the focus shot, which consumes 2 ammo but does twice the damage. So we go up to 110 as well, meaning that you can one-shot body shot a grunt. So if you wanted a body shotting build for the M1000 because maybe you want to fight multiple grunts, or maybe you just don't want to take the time to actually hit headshots, maybe not all the time you're getting headshots, you could go with something like extra ammo. You could go with armor breaking or maybe a faster charge up. You could then go with an extended clip, go with super blow through rounds, and then maybe something like stun. This would be a very good body shotting build for the M1000. So now that we've talked about direct damage weapons, let's talk about damage over time weapons, which are a little bit more difficult to actually understand the breakpoints for them because they deal damage over time. I'm going to be using the corrosive sludge pump for this, and I'm going to be using the volatile impact mixture because I have found that you can one-shot grunts with this with just the regular body shot if you take the potent goo. And that's all you need to take. This increases your base damage to 50, as well as you have then a charge splash damage of 70. But just this 50 damage alone is enough to kill grunts with just one shot, because you shoot it on them and then it deals damage over time. So you're taking away at least half their health right away. And then this is then dealing damage over time. So some of these weapons can be a little bit tricky to talk about, and certain weapons like the flamethrower, you're not really all that concerned because maybe you might take this unfiltered fuel to get to that 15 damage. But with the flamethrower, it really doesn't matter because you're dealing 11 damage per particle that's hitting an enemy, and you're likely hitting an enemy with multiple particles from the flamethrower, and then damage over time because the flamethrower's lighting the ground on fire, dealing damage to them. So you don't necessarily need to hit the exact breakpoint with plenty of these weapons. It can certainly help, especially in the case of something like the Scout, where maybe you have the GK2 and you wanted to put AI stability engine on it, and it lowers your damage by 2. This is enough to make it to where you would need to 2-shot body shot a Swarmer, which can be really annoying to do. So I usually take extra damage here, just so that I don't have to deal with that headache of having to 2-shot small enemies. Hopefully this kind of gave you a better understanding of what breakpoints are and kind of how I build for them, at least specifically in Deep Rock. But that's usually what I mean whenever I'm talking about a breakpoint. You're trying to kill grunts or you're trying to kill swarmers, usually in the most effective way that you can. You can build this even more so towards certain enemies with certain builds, like you could one-shot a slasher, you can one-shot a guard, You can do that pretty easy with something like the grenade launcher or like the breach cutter. You can still do it with some other weapons too, like the revolver, the M1000 can with certain overclocks, things like that. But that would be more of a specific build. And seeing a calculator like this will help you kind of map that out a little bit easier and see what your potential damage is, your potential DPS, and your potential total damage. All of those are fairly important. You can also see which build would be the most ammo efficient as well if you're doing that, because you may be able to get more damage per second out of a certain build, but you're losing out on more total ammo and more total damage overall. So your build might not work on very long missions as well as it will work on very short missions. Thanks, and check out Karl.gg. It's a great website to be learning about a lot of these, and you can also see what all the overclocks do. I hope that it helped you out a little bit. Special thanks to the supporters of this channel. These are my members over here on YouTube and my patrons over on Patreon. They get early access to videos like this, and if you would like to be a part of that, you can. There are links down in the description. Check those out. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!